Good morning, everybody, and I hope you're enjoying this year's Mental Health and Wellbeing Conference. My name's Gareth Richmond, and it gives me great pride to represent your charity as the Community and Engagement Manager for the North and Midlands. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce the next session, our friends at CSSC, Michelle Burton and Matt Phelan, with their session entitled Moving Towards Happiness. This session is all about how increasing those activities of daily living can help us with our general well-being. I really hope you enjoy the session and, of course, the rest of the conference.
Good morning. It's great to be here with you today. I'm Michelle from CSSC and I am delighted to be joined by Matt from the Happiness Project. Hey Matt, how are you doing?
I'm good, Michelle. Really happy to be here and looking forward to getting into some of these questions.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited. So for those of you that don't know, I look after active wellbeing at CSSC. If you haven't heard about active wellbeing before, it's a workplace initiative to get everyone up, out and active, looking after their physical health and wellbeing. My role here is to understand a little bit more about how people get active, the barriers they face, and how we can help them make a positive impact to their lives. Over the last 6 years, I think we've had more than 85,000 people do it, which is pretty amazing, I think. And active wellbeing isn't about running marathons, going to the gym every day. It's just making small steps to overall health and wellbeing. So Matt, thanks for joining us today. I love hearing about the work you do and the difference you make. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
So hey Michelle, thanks for having us. So we got into the world of happiness at work via the Happiness Index in the reverse way that most people think. The way that I got into it is I didn't wake up in the morning and think I want to make people happier at work. I woke up as a director of a company where people were unhappy. And it was under my watch. It was my company. I founded it. I'm an entrepreneur. And we were growing this business, but as we grew, we realized that people were unhappy. And I'm quite a data-driven person, and we'll go through some data later. Don't switch off, people. Hopefully it's not going to be as boring as you're thinking it sounds right now. But I'm quite data-driven, so I wanted to know what actually makes a good culture, because I'm also happy to question stuff, because there's a saying, isn't there, that so Richard Branson saying that if you look after your employees, they'll look after your customers, rather than saying the customer always comes first. But I also knew at that time loads of companies that treated their employees really badly and did really well. So I was just trying to understand what things in culture in a company lead to certain outcomes, because at the end of the day, my job as a director is to get performance. And I wanted to understand what leads to performance. And that's where we started to unpick and try and understand happiness. So in the early days of the corporate world of it, we were just trying to see, is there a correlation between if your employees are happy, are your customers happy? And I know we've got a different type of audience today, but that was the first bit. We're just trying to see the links. And years later, we've now collected data from about 170 countries for about 4 million employees. So we'll go through some of that later. And I'll try, I promise, although I do like to geek out, not to make it too boring. But that's us really. We've been collecting data on happiness for over 10 years now. And I've got to say, there isn't a day that goes by where we don't learn something new or something that challenges our preconceptions beforehand. So I'm Matt, and I'm co-founder of the Happiness Index.
I think it's really exciting, Matt, the work that you do, and especially all that insight you've got, and using that insight to drive decisions going forward, whether you're an employee or the employer. I think it's just fascinating to see. So I know we're both familiar with the idea that obviously physical activity is good for everyone and good for all our bodies, but can you explain the science behind how it kind of directly impacts our mental state and happiness? Why is movement so crucial for things like stress and mood?
Yeah, so I think firstly, the best thing to think of movement is simply a trigger or like a starting gun on other things. And I also want to say I'm going to have to do some movement in this session, because I'm in a room on my own that has those lights that go off.
Love that.
So I could be sitting in the dark in a bit. So if I start getting up, that's my movement, but I have it. It's not some kind of like sophisticated plan that I have. But actually, there's a real point there, because when you move, and we've got the extreme, haven't we? We've got the extreme of like people who are out there running marathons and everything. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the simple starting points of moving, of getting out of bed, etc., etc. They are neurotransmitters in our body. And they're all names that you've heard of before, or you've probably read about, or you've seen on like TikTok Reels or wherever you get your information from. The first one that many people are familiar with is dopamine. So that's your reward signal. And that's why I think things like Couch to 5K are so good, because it is literally your body's rewarding you for finishing whatever that thing is. And before I go into the next two, serotonin and endorphins, I want to remind everyone that all the stuff that actually makes you feel good hasn't been invented in the last 2,000 years. So if you go back to 2,000 years ago, the things that we need are the same now, but there is a massive difference. Huge technology companies for various different reasons have learned how to use that. And that's everything from the advertising industry trying to get you to buy stuff, through to films making you want to cry, all of these things. So the reason this session is so important, I'm looking forward to this, Michelle, is just remember, if you take dopamine as an example, as that first one, that reward signal for the movement, people that run things like TikTok, and I'm not anti these platforms, they also know that too. So when you keep scrolling, you're hitting, they're taking advantage of that dopamine. But what's interesting, the difference between getting it through, for example, social scrolling and movement, is that you only have a certain amount of that you can trigger in a day. So if you're just scrolling, that's where you get that like empty feeling, where you just like, everyone's done it, you've done like half an hour and you've just scrolled and you don't even know what you've done and you feel totally empty. Whereas movement is a more natural, sustainable way of doing that. So all the stuff that has been invented generally recently will be a way of hacking it. Whereas things like movement, going for a walk, they're the natural things. So just think about things that if someone's recommending you do something in this area, ask yourself a question: was that thing around 2,000 years ago? Because if it was, it's probably going to be more likely, when we're talking about non-drug interventions, that's the way forward. So the second one is serotonin. Some people call it that. Some people call it like the happiness hormone. I don't like to call it that, but that really is the one that regulates your mood. And it's so important because both of these are triggered by exercise. The third point is endorphins. So endorphins are natural painkillers. So again, I'm not here to say like stop taking painkillers if you're in pain for certain things, but our body does have these natural neurotransmitters that communicate and regulate our body. And just think of movement as just the thing that triggers that. It's just the starting point, which is again why I just love the concept of just simple things like Couch to 5K, and we'll go through some other bits and bobs today. But in summary, dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, sometimes those names can scare people off, but movement just triggers some of the good stuff in there. So that's just a little bit about that.
Definitely. I think I really love the way you focus on the word movement as well, Matt. For us, I think the success of active wellbeing has become because we just ask people to move more. We're not asking people to get out and do 9 hours of activity every day. We're just saying, take the stairs instead of the lift in the office, get off the bus early, cycle to work instead of getting the tube, go out with your families at the weekend and spend half an hour in a park. And I think it's that word movement as well, for me, is so powerful, because I think some of the other words can be quite off-putting or make you feel like you're not good enough to be there yet. But actually the word movement, everybody can do that, whether that's in your front room just dancing around for half an hour, or like I said, just getting out in nature, before work or during a meeting, so it becomes a walking meeting. I think that word movement is so powerful.
Yeah, and I think I think we're up to about 50 million data points right in the happiness data set. And one thing that I always see in there is people don't like things that feel like it's something that's being done to them. Like HR teams, we all do it. We come up with these like programs, but generally speaking, when you're going through the feedback, and this is organizations all around the world, those programs that make you feel like you've been put on a program, like people just don't like that. So where you can just incorporate it into whatever the person's doing already. A good example of that, I think, is meditation. Meditation works for some people, doesn't work for other people. And that's an example. I think meditation is a good example of finding your own version of it. So if you think about like the original version of what meditation meant was journaling. So it's people like writing down, which is a good process yourself, right? But some people will like journaling. Some people will like the active meditation, like the cliche of someone standing there and humming at the same time. But for some people, their meditation could be walking the dog. It could be it could be pottery. It could be something as simple as going outside and having some chewing gum. And I always see it in our data. It's like I feel like I'm being forced to do this, or someone wants me to do it. But if you can find ways of just building it on what people already enjoy, there's such much more chance of being successful. That's why I just start with a movement point.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess like you just mentioned there, in just integrating into your daily life, right? It's finding those points in your daily life just to take that moment, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So I think I was just going to mention, your work with the happiness index is fascinating. What findings can you share with us? Are there any surprising insights that come out of that we might think, oh, I didn't know that?
I'll share with you like the top 4, okay? But you won't be surprised by any of them. And that's what it always comes back to. Like when people hear our research and our data, they're like, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense. So I'll just talk about like what I think is the most important driver. So in the top 4 drivers of happiness at work sits psychological safety, acknowledgement, and freedom. Now, they're all things, Michelle, if I said to you that they drive happiness, you'd probably go, oh yeah, they are important to me. But by knowing that, for example, it helps people understand within teams how we're all different. So if I said those 3 to you, Michelle, just as an example, what would you say is the most important one to you?
Probably the latter, actually, I think, for me.
So and can you just remind everyone what the latter one was?
Was to be acknowledged by others, was it?
Yeah.
I think perhaps sometimes when the fast pace that we're in, I mean, you're probably the same, right? You're probably better than me, but you go from meeting to this project to that project, and sometimes you can kind of get caught up in that. It can be quite results driven, so you end up not taking that moment to sit back. I know, Matt, we spoke last week, and when I told you the amount of people that had done active wellbeing this year, it was like, I think even I forget, wow, over 35,000 people have done it.
I couldn't believe it. When you told me that, I couldn't believe it.
I know. And actually it made me sit back for a minute, because I think even I get caught up in the next project, in the next campaign, in the next event. What's the next thing? And I never take that moment to sit back. And even if it's not somebody else saying it to me, perhaps it should be myself. And actually it was when we chatted last week and you mentioned that to me, I think I went to bed that night, like actually with a feeling of like quite self-purpose, that actually I've achieved something this year. I've got over 35,000 people active and looking after their well-being.
Yeah. So I don't know if people can write in the chat, but I'm going to say them again. I'm going to add a 4th one in, okay? So we've got acknowledgement, we've got freedom, we've got psychological safety, and I'm going to add in, which is actually the number 1, which I left out, although I said psychological safety is most important, relationships. Oh, as I said, that the little light has gone off in here, so now I'm moving around. So,
I like it if you wave your hands around that,
So I'm just going to say them again: psychological safety, positive relationships, freedom to take opportunities, and feelings of acknowledgement. And if people can, put them in, type in the chat, like Michelle said, acknowledgement was her number 1 driver. Type into the chat which one yours is. The reason I do that is because what you'll find in a group of 2, 4, 5, we've done it up to 100,000, all the answers would be different, Michelle.
Yeah.
Although the top 4 globally is the same, what people need and want changes. And actually the conversation that me and you are having is really insightful because it helps you work together. So for me, my number 1 is freedom. So if I ever feel that my freedom is restricted in any, and that's probably why, like the movement thing, I run like a few times a week. If anyone told me to go running, I'd stop running. I'm that sort of stubborn person. But freedom's up there for me. But the point is, once you know what the other people is, then you can make sure that you're aware of it and focus on it. And I'll give you an example, Michelle. I've got 2 people in my team. One says freedom is really important for them. And one says actually an engagement metric, which is clarity. So the one that likes clarity likes me to check in with them daily. The one that likes freedom likes me to check in with them once a month. If I manage them both the same, one of them would be, I don't want to swear because I'm here, one of them would be annoyed at me. Okay. So what this just simple activity does, it uses the data that says the top 4 are psychological safety, positive relationships, freedom to take opportunities, feelings of acknowledgement. Just asks you to rank them as a team. And by the process of doing what me and you did, you actually learn more about each other, but also yourself. And then I've had people then do it at home as well. People crazy. Ask your brother, ask your sister, ask your mum, ask your dad. You'll be surprised in families how many parents, especially of like my parents' generation, who've never actually acknowledged their children because they weren't taught to, not because they're horrible people, but they've never said well done, or you know what, you've done a really good job, or I'm really proud of you. So think about those top 4, and just that's where data comes in. It's not there to tell you what to do. It's just to throw insight in to start sparking interesting conversations.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. Even just listening to you there, Matt, I think I'm looking at the team that I work within now, my core team and then the wider team. And I can already see some of those differences, probably just from having worked with people for like 6-7 years, actually, then how you should communicate differently, how you should work together differently, how you should maybe set some people kind of timelines and not others, So it's really interesting that. And even in my personal life, I'm thinking about my son, who is definitely a freedom person, right? So if I tell him to do something at that moment in that time, that does not work. If I give him an option and say, you can do this now, or you can do this in 5 minutes, it will be done. But actually, when I force that upon him, it could be that he's just a pre-teenager. But actually, when I force that upon him, and he's always been a bit like that, he kind of explodes a bit. And that's really interesting to me because he's clearly like a freedom person, and wants to make that decision himself of when I'm doing this, when I'm brushing my teeth, or whatever it is. It's really simple tasks, but I can even see that now. You're just saying that's making me recognize that in him.
Yeah, and I've got 2 children. One that's actually wants more clarity and doesn't like it. Sometimes I do the option thing at home, like, would you rather do this or do that? And then they get really stuck and they feel stressed about it. So Michelle, there's just another point I want to just link the movement question to the happiness question of what we found out. So there is a World Happiness Report that comes out every year. It comes out of Oxford. It's built by the United Nations. Incredible report. You can go and download it for free. In their last report, there isn't an activity that doesn't improve your happiness of doing it by doing it with other people. So if you take movement as an example, if you start to do couch to 5K for yourself, that's great. But then if you go for a park run or you do something with other people, that's where you start to enhance things. So I just wanted to say again, just to bring it back to work, that positive relationships is found in private studies. So 2 of the longest studies are at Yale and Harvard. Positive relationships is a driver of happiness in personal life. But in the data set the Happiness Index has, our data set is specifically work, but is still the number 1 driver at work. So where you can find activities to do together and work out solutions and things together, that's a huge driver. But when you bring it back to the movement thing, That's why where people can get to involved. I went to an incredible event recently by the UK wheelchair basketball team. And it was just incredible just to hear about this community of people that are coming together based on movement, but are heavily restricted in what they can do. And some of the stories about how wheelchair basketball had transformed their life was incredible. So I just want to bring together the movement bit and the data.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting listening to you talk about that, because one of the things that comes out of active wellbeing is you do it as a team, right? So we're traveling, whether that's your individual team in your workplace, or we do it collectively as a team. So the 17,000 people that did it in February, we collectively traveled around the world together. And there's something in that, right? We're all moving together. So whether that's me as my team against you and your team, Matt, and we're seeing who can get there first, or actually as a collective, all these 17,000 people, all the movement and activity we're doing is helping us virtually travel around the world. So that's so interesting listening to that.
Michelle, I just want to bring on a point here around introverts and extroverts and relationships. So sometimes this conversation gets hijacked by what people tend to do when they design a program. So let's say you've heard these two bits of information about how movement is good for your body and how relationships are good for your happiness. What people do is they take that information and then they apply it the way that they would want it done. We all do it. You organise someone's birthday party, you organise it how you would. So you just get excited, don't you? And this happens at work all the time. And again, it's just going down that thing of like, let's just say you're a runner and then you start organising a big running event. That doesn't mean that's right for everyone else. And the reason I bring up the introvert extrovert point is I'm actually quite a shy person who through practice has basically had to do presentations like this all the time. But my default is really to be quite shy, and to go and talk in front of a group of people is still partly my worst nightmare, even though I'm very happy to be here. What happens here is, and the reason I break this apart is because in a world where people are more separated now, digital technology and so on, sometimes the solution is, right, we're getting everyone together, like 1,000 people in a room, or all this kind of stuff. The reason I bring that up is you've got to be really intentional about how you then design these things, because relationships are a driver for all of us, but how we seek those relationships is different. So if you take the chief technology officer of the happiness index, he says acknowledgement is high, but what he hates, and I know this through making the mistake myself, he hates public acknowledgement. So I'll give you an example. When we had a neuroscience upgrade of our technology platform, it was so good that in the company update, I did a personal shout out to him. I've worked with him for 15 years. He absolutely hated it. And I know, Michelle, I know that. And I just made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
What I should have done is gone for a coffee with him. He would have valued some one-on-one time, and over a coffee, I should have said thank you. So the reason I just brought that up is sometimes people take the good bits. You go, right, movement's good. Relationships are good. Now everyone must run an ultra marathon on Wednesday with no training for it, just because the person organising does an ultra marathon. So I'm just bringing up, like, remember the data is the data, but then you have to apply it, understanding the people around you.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, we had somebody that did active wellbeing actually wrote into us. She kind of never did PE at school, wasn't sporty. And I use that word like that, wasn't sporty, was kind of doing 1,000-2,000 steps a day. And basically during active wellbeing, she kind of wrote to us, send us a load of pictures, but she basically just started getting out on her own. And by the end of the month, she'd started doing 10, 11, 12,000 steps a day. And it was the kind of spiral of what that did for her, because she thought that she couldn't ever be active, right? Because that's what she'd kind of been told. She didn't want to go to the gym. She didn't want to join a group class. She just wanted to get outside and have more movement, be more active. And when I read this story, and I thought, gosh, like, it isn't, like you were just saying, it isn't, we can't make it for everybody, but everybody can find their small thing within it that's right for them.
Absolutely. And we all carry baggage, don't we? So our head of neuroscience, Clive, he asks he makes people ask themselves a question, which I'll share with the group now, and I'll ask everyone that's on the call this question, which is the story you tell yourself about yourself more important than the truth. So whilst people try and figure out what the hell I just said, I'll give you an example of myself when it comes to movement. So if someone had asked me 5 to 6 years ago if I'd like to go swimming with them, I would have told them that I hated swimming. I would have said thank you, because I try and be polite, but I said I hate swimming, I don't want to come. What actually, when Clive asked me that question the first time, I didn't realise until I went to go swimming with my children, I forgot that swimming's fun. But what I was is, when I went with school, I was really bad at swimming and I just didn't really know how to swim. So the reason that question is really important, and it wasn't until I became an adult and saw my children swim, and then I learned to swim properly myself, that I realised I didn't hate swimming. I just didn't know how to swim. Yeah. But it was more comfortable for me to say that I hate swimming, and then the truth was actually I can't swim, I should go and get some lessons. But I wasn't comfortable at that point to admit that. So with all these subjects, sometimes there is personal work that someone needs to do that the company or the organisation shouldn't and couldn't really get into that. Like, the company shouldn't be coming to me saying, Matt, you should get some swimming lessons. I need to work that out myself. But there will be, everyone will have barriers in their life that is stopping them. Public speaking, and often it will go back to childhood, or a comment maybe another kid said to you when you were at school about something. So there's a lot to unpick, but I'll leave people with that question, which is the story you tell about yourself more important than the truth? And it'll be things that everyone says to themselves, like, oh, I don't like public speaking, or I don't like swimming, or I'm not a runner, or whatever.
But you know, that was what was going through my mind. I always say, like, I'm not a runner. And actually my best friend and who works with me as well on active wellbeing, we run together. She's like, you are a runner. You're running. She's like, there's no pace, there's no time. You haven't got to be the fastest, or you haven't got to be the best. But she's like, but you are a runner. But I think that goes back to probably my school days, when if you weren't in that kind of running PE sporty group back in the day, you weren't a runner, So I've carried that with me. But actually through working on something like active wellbeing, working with my best friend on this kind of campaign and project and brand, seeing, being out and running it kind of outside, I'm like, oh, maybe I can run. So it's really interesting you brought that up, actually, Matt.
Yeah, and I was, I don't know if it was you telling me, Michelle, this story, but I was speaking to someone who'd, they entered one of those like night runs, and they came last. Was it you told me this story, Michelle?
No.
So they came last, and they were feeling really bad about it. And they'd taken, I can't remember what the average time to do it was, like 5 to 6 hours, and they'd come last. And they're feeling really bad about it. And then one of the volunteers said to them, you're amazing. And they were like, so again, it was acknowledgement. And they said, it's funny because all those people who ran it really fast, they only did it for 3 or 4 hours. You did it for 8 to 9 hours. You did it longer than anyone else. Yeah. And they went, that volunteer flipped that person from never wanting to do it again because they came last, to thinking, you know what? I'm that bloody minded person that even when they're clearing up like they said, they were clearing up the course, trying to get rid of it. And that person does it all the time now. And they get joy from the fact that they're coming last.
Yeah. I always remember that saying I see all the time, that, comparison is the thief of joy. And that's one of the things I really try and kind of instill in myself and my family as well, is like, we don't always have to be the fastest, the best, the quickest. You know what I mean? It's just like, we're out here, we're doing it, we're giving it a go. And actually, I'm enjoying myself. Yeah. I don't have to be the fastest to enjoy something. I don't have to be the strongest to enjoy something. I just am enjoying it because we're together and doing it.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, social media drives that, doesn't it? My son came to me the other day, saying he thinks he's fat. As an example, if you looked at my son, he has what I would say is a normal body for a boy of his age. Yeah. But because of social media, and he sees images of Cristiano Ronaldo is what he's been looking at, he thinks that there should be like, he should look like that. But that isn't the body shape that he should have for his age. So there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressures on all of this stuff. And I suppose the point is there, just remember to unpick some stuff that you might have had going on for a long time.
Yeah. Definitely. Matt, I know you've mentioned before, you used the term happiness stacking. You know, what is that? How does it help people, you know, especially, I guess, people like you and I and people that might be listening today? You know, we've got busy schedules. You know, we want to build some habits, some consistent habits, you know, without feeling overwhelmed and it be too much into our daily or weekly lives.
So happiness stacking is kind of comes from like Atomic Habits, which some people may or may have not read, but it's where you stack habits, and specifically we're talking about things that drive happiness. Okay, so we've already talked about one. So one might be you go for a run, and then you might stack it by you might go for a run with a friend, and then you might triple stack it by going for a run with a friend and then going for a coffee with them. So it's just thinking about the different parts of your day, and a bit like when I was doing my GCSEs, which was a long time ago, they had like GCSE bite-sized stuff, and it was like breaking it down. So it breaks down those big goals where you think like, oh, that thing is massive. And you mentioned one earlier. I've definitely tried to do that one, like just take the stairs when I can. And like whenever I'm traveling away, might not necessarily be able to do the things that I would normally do for movement, but when I can, I will take the stairs, because that is they're just little habits that you build, but then you just add one on each time. And if anyone's got any examples of where they've done that, but also sometimes it's removing like my worst habit is just chocolate and crisps overload. So I will do something healthy, and then I'll do the opposite to happiness stacking. I'll hit the chocolate and the crisps because I think, oh yeah, I've earned that. So I haven't managed to achieve this, so I just want to put my hands up on that one. Every now and then I'm switching it for an apple or a banana, but I don't want to pretend that I've achieved that. But that's like my attempt at happiness stacking, where I'm like, right, okay, I've done that exercise thing. When I go for a coffee with my friend, I'll get a piece of fruit rather than like a massive piece of banana cake. So I'm trying to convince myself that banana cake's healthy. So it's just thinking about those little things, and just start attaching them on, and you'll be surprised how quickly they become habits.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the happiness stacking. In the February Active Wellbeing this year, I decided I really wanted to get Noah, this is my 10-year-old, involved with it. So he wanted to try badminton, right? And again, I preface, I'm not sporty, okay, definitely not. So we went to play badminton, hired a court, local leisure centre, played it, didn't know what we were doing, loved it, started going every Sunday, told my sister came, right? My sister told her kids, her 3 grown-up kids came, and suddenly we're all playing badminton on a Sunday together for an hour and a half, and then afterwards we then all go and grab something to eat or coffee afterwards. And it's interesting because I didn't even realize we were doing that, but actually the feeling that we all had after that kind of time together, movement, trying something new. By the way, I wasn't great at it, and I'm not great at it at all, but actually laughing while we're not good at it and one of us being good at it and one of us not. I mean, it's so interesting that happiness stacking, because I didn't even look at it that way, but just listening to you talk, that was obviously definitely something we were doing as a kind of core family, but then wider into my family unit as well.
Yeah, and again that again, it's just they're just natural things, aren't they? You're going to do something with your tribe. Obviously, badminton has been invented in the last few hundred years, so it sort of breaks my model a little bit. But that whole thing where your tribe are doing something together.
Yeah.
I've done that with presents as well, because I'm pretty hard to buy for, because I'm not into anything. I don't like wear jewellery. I'm not, and stuff actually often kind of makes me feel unhappy. Like even when I see everyone open all the presents at Christmas, I have this weird response to it. But even something like that, like some friends wanted to get me something for my birthday, so I just asked them to book a court for us all to go and play paddle together. So it's just another example. I got to see my friends. I don't actually drink alcohol, which is going to make like half the people on the call hate me straight away. So like buying me a beer doesn't work. But booking a paddle court, which frustratingly, paddle's quite an expensive sport. So I think that's something that needs to get fixed, because it's such an accessible sport. Because tennis is quite, if you take tennis as an example, tennis is quite hard to pick up if you like not serving and play against someone. But paddle it's just so accessible. But It's not accessible from a price point, because if you've got a nice job, like many of us here on this call, that's great. But for a lot of people, it's not as inclusive as it should be. I'm just going to move again, Michelle, because these lights going on.
No, I love that. I know one of the things, Matt, that I face, I guess, is, and I guess many on the call today, I find myself sitting at a desk for most of the day. So how can you talk to some people that might be on this call, fellow civil servants who might feel they don't have the time for the gym or the long run? What are some simple kind of practical strategies that they can use to integrate more movement into their work day?
Yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, I think I can feed directly to this point on the time, because as an entrepreneur, every single minute you're trying to maximize. It's do or die out there. Your business is gone if you don't get things moving. It's the opposite to living in a safe environment and a safe job. So if you think about that and you think about an entrepreneur, they would just never stop, would they? They would never stop. You'd just be outputting. And having done this for since 2008 now, what I've realized, and the way that I do, I will go into some practical tips, but the thing that I keep in my head is the diminishing return of not doing that. Yeah. And the classic easy way to remember that is your afternoon work. I never, ever in my life ever think that I look at my diary and I think there's no way I've got time for lunch today. But what I've learned is if I don't get up from my desk, and even if it's the practice of going to get something and bringing it back to my desk, and maybe that's 5 minutes away or 10 minutes away, I know that I'm way more creative, more productive in the afternoon. So I think you have to look at exercise and food and diet and everything as well as an investment in your own productivity. So if the starting point of the question is, I don't have time to do it, I would argue back that you don't have time to not take a break. Even though as a sentence that makes no sense, you've got to think of it as a diminishing return, because there is no way that your brain and your body is working at optimal point in that afternoon if you haven't. To the point where I think leaders should see it as a performance issue. People talk about what are you going to cover in someone's performance review? You should be encouraging your teams, have you got up? Have you gone? Because the way our brain is designed to be on the move, it's why you come up with your best ideas when you're going for a walk or you're walking a dog. So am I going to get people in the civil service to suddenly add this to performance reviews? Probably not from this 40-minute conversations, but I hope maybe 1 or 2, 3 people are thinking about asking their team and seeing it as a positive. It's not a badge of honor to sit at a desk for 8 hours straight. To me, if I saw someone at a desk 8 hours straight, that means that their brain is not going to be at optimum. So again, have you heard of the concept of corporate athletes?
No, tell me.
So corporate athletes is where you think about, just like an athlete would, you think about how you can best perform at work and what's needed. And you think about athletes, they understand the importance for rest, they understand the importance for sleep, they understand the importance of diet. So it's just that concept again, that just sitting still for I would bet right now, if we, and maybe Michelle, you can make this happen, but if we did an analysis of someone that sat still for 8 hours with a couple of toilet breaks in there versus someone who worked for 6.5 hours and put the proper movement in there and everything, I bet the one that works for 6.5 hours is going to actually output what is needed more. Obviously, it depends on the role, but just think of it like an investment. That's what I would do based on the research and the data that I've seen in our data set.
Yeah. I mean, I just from a practical point of myself and the CSSC here, we're encouraged to put our lunch breaks into our diary. So actually, I'm blocking out an hour, right? Now, I might not take an hour, but that hour is my hour. And if I choose, a lot of the time, I go to the gym at lunchtime if I'm in the office, because it's the only time I get to go, right? Because obviously I've got a young son, so I can't come before work or after work. It just gets too complicated. So that's my hour, and we're kind of all encouraged to use that. And actually, I can tell you, if I'm in Teams calls or meetings from 8:30, 9 through to 12, and I take that hour and I go out, go to the gym, do a bit of movement, kind of listen to a bit of music, or even watch a little bit of kind of, I don't know, trash TV while I'm on the treadmill, I come back, I'm much more productive from the 1 to 4 p.m. meetings that I'm in. Whereas if I sit here at my desk and eat my lunch at my desk, right, kind of scanning it in, replying to emails, making sure I've gone back to everything, I'm definitely not as productive. So that's really interesting that there's actually like a phrase for that.
Yeah, and I think all these things, I don't need to tell people about all these things like walking meetings and active commuting and taking the stairs. That all that stuff's out there in blogs, but find the one that the one that you are going to enjoy, because if it's the thing that the super person that runs 20 marathons a day is doing, and that's not what you enjoy, it's going to be a fad, isn't it? So like, it might be chess, there might be someone else in the organization that might want to play. Like, you can play a game of chess over 2 years, can't you? Like, maybe you just go and you make your move and you come back. But I'm a massive fan of the walking meetings. Been doing them for years. They're my favorite. I've done walking interviews as well. I find that if you interview someone in an office, everyone just goes into like a GCSE drama play. Everyone's playing their role. You're playing the interviewer, they're playing the interviewee. You're not really getting to know the person. Whereas if you go for a walk, there's obviously inclusivity things you've got to consider from that perspective. But if you do mix it up, you get to see a different side of someone.
Definitely. A couple of years ago, I had an allotment with my dad, actually. It was just before lockdown. I learned more about my dad as a person being on the allotment next to him, than I had done in my previous 40 years. Honestly, there was something about us being side by side. Noah was there, rolling around in mud at the same time, but there was something about me being kind of next to him, talking, learning, asking questions. I don't even know what it was, but I definitely learned more about him in that kind of movement. And, again, I wasn't running marathons with my dad. He's kind of 70. We weren't doing that, but we were being active together, doing something. Our mind was on the allotment and gardening and planting and all of that. But I learned so much about him. And I think actually our relationship has changed through that as well.
It's amazing. And I think, again, I didn't think we'd come back to serotonin, but I interviewed this professor on, if you're interested in any of the research behind this, I've got a podcast called The Happiness Index, and you can go and listen to, there's an episode on pretty much everything we're discussing here, from hormones through to this one. I didn't expect to talk about this today, but I had a professor on because I heard the headline. I can't remember whether it was like the Daily Mail or something. It just said, soil makes you happy. So like my intrigued mind is that a load of BS, or what is that? So I tracked down the professor, got him on the podcast, interviewed him. When you're on that allotment, when you go for a walk in nature, or your kids are playing in the dirt, or you're on the allotment, there is bacteria in soil that triggers serotonin in your brain in the same way it triggers the same thing that antidepressants do. So again, I'm not here to say if you're taking antidepressants that you should stop doing that. All it is doing is things like antidepressants. They're learning from the chemistry of the brain on what to trigger. So there are many good cases on why someone would need to take antidepressants. However, what's interesting is that goes back to that 2,000 years thing again. So being in nature has been triggering, through bacteria in soil, serotonin in your brain, which when I heard the headline, I thought was an absolute load of rubbish. So I got the professor on the podcast and we went through his research. And if you're hearing this and you think it's rubbish, or you're hearing you think it's great, go and listen to it and make your own mind up based on the guy's research. But I found it incredible to listen to. And again, it's the happiness stacking thing again, isn't it? You're on the allotment, you're active. If you're there, you're in nature. Like, I think if you sit under trees, the chemicals that trees release reduce blood pressure and so on. So all of these things, they all stack together.
Yeah, I felt like I was learning from my dad. You know what I mean? That his dad had taught him, and then he was teaching me and teaching Noah at the same time. And there was that again, I
It's the
didn't
relationship.
recognize it. Yeah, as happiness stacking in. But actually, when you're talking about that, I can see that's what happened for us during that period.
Yeah, I find we've got a pretty international workforce at the Happiness Index because of what we do and the languages we need. I find that a lot of people who come and work for us in London really struggle with the pub culture. People are going to think that I'm like, oh God, this anti-drinking guy. I'm not anti-drinking, but a lot of what we do as a culture is go to the pub, and that has major benefits to it around the social side of it. But from a happiness stacking perspective, there's other things that they do in other places that, like, we can't do it here. But when you get Australians over, they're like, oh, they're used to going to like Bondi Beach after work with their colleagues.
Yeah.
We're never going to be able to do that in London or in the UK, but it's just an example of the differences around the world.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, I know we've talked about a lot of, I guess, about as an individual, like what can I do as an individual? But I think it'd be interesting just because we're here, just kind of with people that work within the civil service, how can organisations create a culture that encourages and supports, physical activity and well-being in and outside of the workplace? Do you know of any programs that are successful? Anything that they can take away as well if they've got a team?
So, Mike, you probably know from getting to know me on this, I'm not going to be on the nanny state side of it. As in, I think there are organisations that do incentives and recognition really well, but it's got to be done in an opt-in way that someone wants to do. I'll give you an example. So my son and my mum, so my son and his grandma, have got this competition they're doing against each other on steps.
Love it.
But I haven't set that. That's something they are doing, and the situation is there for it to occur, and I think incentives and recognition should be there. But if it becomes forced, then it does the opposite. It becomes the opposite to inclusive. And you said, you even said it yourself, Michelle, I'm not sporty. I would question that based on what we were saying about what people learn from the past. And you can find that it will drive some people away as well. I think the most important thing, and again, I know I've spoken a lot about being a parent, modelling, I honestly think, is the only true answer to this, which is leaders have to model healthy behaviour. So healthy behaviour goes across. So everyone that's got children of my age at the moment, all the parents are outraged about these things here. Do you give your kid a phone? Now, I'm not going to start to say today whether I think that's good or bad, even though we did talk about dopamine and phones and what that does. But one thing I can tell you is I also know a lot of parents that are saying their kids shouldn't have phones, but they're talking to you like this. So they're saying, no, kids should not have phones. Phones are terrible, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I think for all of this subject, it has to be modelled by senior leadership. And this goes across the board, doesn't it? So not sending people emails at 4:00 in the morning, that's modelling healthy behaviour, isn't it? Every now and then you may need to do that, and that's the exception. But if the rule is people in the organisation are not moving around on the movement example, or the rule is people are not acknowledging each other, that's not great. So I know it's a simplistic answer, but I think it has to be modelled, because you need to allow programs and incentives and give people the time and encourage it from the bottom up. But if leadership don't model it, because even if you put the best program in, but then all the leadership are like, well, that's not for us, we don't have time, then you're reinforcing the old behaviours. So I just think modelling is the only way, whether it comes to parenting or leadership.
Totally agree, actually. That's something I think we try and do here within the workplace. And I think, you were talking about that kind of, your son and your mum having that, kind of competitive steps. You haven't set that in place, but it's become apparent that they're both probably trying to beat each other. And I think we have that as well. We say here, well, we're not competitive. And then we're all in a team together, myself and my team, for active wellbeing. And I know, because I come into work the next day and someone will say to me, oh, I just went over you. I saw you at this amount, and I kind of ran around the garden twice last night. And I'm thinking, oh, like you don't realise that people can have that element in them, or it becomes part of that, and that kind of team bonding over. Oh, I was checking you last night, and actually you were like, the next. And I think there's definitely that leadership thing that you say there from the senior leaders down as well. So not only is it coming from us upwards, but actually it's coming down, and that I agree, it's in parenting and in the workplace.
Yeah.
So I know we're probably wrapping up a little bit short on time, but just to finish up, Matt, I think it would be great if there's like just one simple piece of advice that you could give to anyone that's listening and watching today that just feels like I haven't started yet, but I want to start my wellbeing journey. Like what one piece of advice would you give them?
I'm just gonna start with 5 minutes. And I'm just going to say, like, whatever that thing is you're thinking that might be the thing, whether it's chess, going for a walk, maybe you're going to start the cheese club, 5-minute cheese club where it's all laid out and everyone tries to bit cheese. Whatever it is, just start, just try and do the first 5 minutes and then see how it is. The other tip that I've started doing with that is I've started counting how long things take. I'll give you an example. I've had some stuff that I've needed to put in the loft for years. And I finally got around to putting it in the loft, and I counted as I did it how long it was, and it was about 75 seconds.
Right.
I've told myself that I haven't had time to do that.
Yeah.
There's no way I've got time to do that. So my first thing is just the concept of time is just really good, and it just start with 5 minutes. Every single person can invest 5 minutes, but focus on something that's fun that you're looking forward to, so it feels like a reward. But then some of the stuff that, even if you're thinking you don't have time for that, try and do it once and record it. You'll be surprised, like how these little things can start, and then start sharing what you've done. So if you're the one who's done 5-minute cheese club, and you're the one that's done 5-minute walk, I was reading an autobiography by Johnny Sexton, the rugby player, over the holiday, and his teacher was obsessed with rugby. So in every break they put on like ball practice where they were chucking the ball. Just like little things like that. You can find the time. And I say this as an entrepreneur who cannot get enough hours. Like I need more hours. But it's not happening. But I think start with 5 minutes would be my one, Michelle.
I love that. Matt, thank you so much. Honestly, I absolutely find it just amazing speaking with you. I think it's fascinating listening to you talk, and I hope everyone that's listening and watching this as well agrees. I know Matt's gonna put some stuff in the chat. I'll make sure that I put some stuff in the chat so that if you want to get involved with what Matt does and the Happiness Project or anything to do with active wellbeing, we're here. We can answer any questions that you have. But honestly, Matt, I just love listening to you speak. So thank you so much for your time. Honestly, that was great.
No, thanks for coming along, everyone, and thank you, Michelle. We're currently doing the largest ever study into this at the moment. I'm going to put the survey link in the chat. If you want to get involved, take that survey, and it will contribute to the deepest ever study on this. And then hopefully I'll come back next year and I'll be sharing even more insight that everyone on here has contributed to. So I don't think work needs to be miserable. And the more work data we collect on it, the more we can start to fix that together.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you both for that session, and particularly thank you for sharing your personal snippets and stories. It's made it really relevant to everybody, I think. We're going to launch straight into the questions because there are many of them. So I think the first one here is to you, Michelle. You mentioned the Active Wellbeing Challenge. Can you tell us more about when the challenges are?
Yes, so we have 3 virtual challenges that happen across the year. The biggest one is in February. So we take on a month-long challenge to travel around the world together. That'll be launched in a couple of months' time. So make sure you kind of check out our website. I can drop that into the chat. We have one that happens in May, and that's because it's Mental Health Awareness Month and National Walking Month. And that's just a 2-week challenge based purely on walking. So just getting any shoes on, getting outside and exploring. And then September, we again do another challenge in September, just to kind of get you into those autumn months, get you looking after kind of your well-being as well, and that will happen then. But you can keep a lookout on our website, and everything will be up there for you to join. It's completely free. Anybody can join the challenges, and I think that's one of the things that we keep it free and open for everyone, because that is a barrier for people looking after themselves, is kind of time and money. So we make sure that, you know, all of the challenges that we put on as part of Active Wellbeing, anybody can join.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. The next question we have is, do you have a suggestion for how to implement this for those suffering from chronic fatigue or disabilities where moving is harder? Also for how to motivate with neurodivergences, particularly ADHD?
Did you want me to take that one, Matt, or do you have any thoughts?
If you go first, I've got a few bits that I could put in.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of what Matt said right at the end, I guess, of the chat that we just had, it's, you know, we just want people to take 5 minutes to move their body, and that's for however that works for them. So I think whatever works best for you, I think I would just try to put more movement into your daily life.
Yeah, and I think that's, for me, that's the bit that I meant about where I've seen this go wrong, is where organisations try and get a bit nanny state about it. That's kind of what I meant. That I think there's this vision out there of what you want people to do, but you need to understand that everyone's coming from a different perspective or starting point, and just building that flexibility in it. Otherwise, nobody likes anything that feels like it's something that's been done to them. That's what we always see in the feedback. So just giving that room and encouragement for people to join in a way that works for them.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. The next question that we have is phones. Well, the 24/7 access to social media seems so damaging. How can we encourage people to just stop looking at them for 10 minutes, including ourselves?
Do you want me to jump on that one?
Yeah, you go Matt first, Matt, and then I'll go afterwards with a little story.
I know I talked about children quite a bit, but I always imagine it's me versus Mark Zuckerberg with my children. But I always think in my head, Mark Zuckerberg has got billions and billions of pounds and understanding of neuroscience to capture attention. So what I think is we're living in an attention economy, and everything is trying to get our attention. So you don't have billions and billions of pounds worth of technology to fight it. But what you do have is a diary, and you do have ways of scheduling time. So as an example, my work phone is also my personal phone. So there is a point in the day when it goes away. There's a very religious point for me personally. I never take my phone on my lunch break. And when I say lunch break, do I get to spend an hour having a lunch break every day? No. I know that there's the real world as well. But I do try and get up from my desk, go for a walk, and I don't take my phone with me. So I think looking at your diary and thinking about how you can create space in it. I'm quite an extremist as well. I do, when I go on holiday, I don't take my phone with me, which scares people. But again, going back to the modelling bit, again, I'm speaking from a parent and as a leader, you're not going to get your team or your children to do something unless you model it yourself. So I would look for space. I've been thinking about putting signs up in my house, talk about nanny state, home state, of saying no phone areas, but because it frustrates me so much. But I think you have to fight back with the basics of scheduling time and space that doesn't have phones in it. Otherwise, you're going to be forever scrolling and caught in that. And there is a neurodivergence thing in that as well, around different personality types and how susceptible you are to the dopamine hit that you might get from TikTok, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you for that one, Matt. Did you want to chip in on that one, Michelle?
I was just going to say, I trialed something this week with my son, right? And actually I got caught out. I said, right, we're going to have an hour without anything. No TV, no electronics, me, you, that's it, right? So I went to the charity shop, got some board games, right? Because I was like, I'm going in for this. And we've tried it. His behaviour has improved all week, right? And then last night I was tired. I didn't want to do it. Got the board game out, had my phone there. And he said, Mum, your phone's there. Right. And I was like, I had to check myself, a bit like what Matt was saying. I was like, oh, actually, my phone is there. I promised you an hour. I'm going to give you an hour. Right. And I have definitely noticed his behaviour changing. So I think even those small things that I'm doing, that small habit of just an hour, like I'm not saying he can't go and play a game for a little bit when he's done his homework, but I'm saying there's an hour of when we just have time together. And I think even when Matt mentioned in the workplace, one of the things I do, I mentioned in the talk that I put my lunch break in, but I've also started putting no meetings in my diary so that people cannot put, then they see my diary, they see I've had 3 meetings in the morning. They won't put me into a meeting in the afternoon because actually I've put an hour in because I need to respond to emails. I need to do some work. I need to deliver the project or the campaign or anything that I'm working on at the moment. And that does work really well because I think people then look at your diary and see, actually, she's not free. So I better find another time.
Mm-hmm. I think I was reading a neuroscience, and by the way, someone asked about the soil episode. I've put that in the studio chat. I don't know if someone can share that. With Professor Lowry, absolutely fascinating. The podcast is called The Happiness Index, by the way, but the link will come. There's a really great neuroscience article out. I'm going to try and Google it and get it on here before we finish. If not, Rochelle will send it round. And it's on the importance of boredom. And boredom is something that we often think about as just like something silly. But it's about, scientists have looked into how important it is that your brain has that space for things like creativity. So on that, when we're talking about the breaks, getting away from the phone, there is evolutionary reasons that we need to do that. So going back to Michelle's point about creating space in your diary that's not for meetings, you need to. If you can't keep, if you're going back to back, it's not an efficient way to turn up in those meetings. So, and again, every single business, including myself, my own, says it's too busy to create those gaps. But if you don't, you've got to look at it as an efficiency issue. If it's back to back, there's a fundamental problem elsewhere that needs to be looked at.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Matt. The next one that we have is, what is an acceptable or best break length for every day? Totally agree. 8 hours at desk is not great.
I think I'm just going to jump in on that one. I think you have to start from where you are. Like if you're not doing any at the moment, 1 minute is good. If you're doing 20 minutes, 30 minutes is good. So again, like a bit like what we talked about, that question about people's backgrounds and personality types to do with exercise, I think you've just got to start from where you are. So if you are literally not doing it at all and you can make 1 minute to do something else or whatever, I think start from where you are and then build out from there. If you can get to the point where you are having a proper lunch break and one break in the morning and one break in the afternoon, imagine like it was like when you were at school. I think that's the optimum, but that's not realistic for everyone. So just start from where you are and build up with 1 minute and go from there.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. The next one that we have is, sometimes happiness, or what that even means, can seem so far from being achievable at times. Can you suggest a good place to start, please?
Oh, I mean, we need 6 weeks on this one, don't we? I think it's such a good question. I think the thing to keep in mind is the hedonic treadmill. So that's where you're chasing what you think is going to make you happy, and then you get there and you get it and you're not happy. I think what I would advise, whether this is work or at home, look at the ingredients of what make you happy and focus on them. So the number one driver of happiness at work and at home is relationships. So look at your life and think, are you making time for relationships? And that includes at work. That includes, are you going for a coffee with the person that reports to you? Are you? When was the last time you phoned your mum? If your mum's still around, all those types of things. The best place to start is relationships, because it's the number one driver of happiness. So look at your life and just think, is there areas that I could make more time?
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Matt. The next one that we have is, what is the best way to suggest going for walks whilst having meetings, or bring in or suggest changes that are not something yet practiced in my office, unlike previous workplaces where it was really beneficial?
I mean, I think I can give an example of that in our workplace. So it doesn't work for every meeting. There are some meetings where people want to share their screens, and I think, or you've got to present. So yeah, it's not going to work all the time, but we definitely try to have one meeting where it can be kind of a listening meeting or a walking meeting, or it's a sharing of ideas meeting. And I think we've tried to encourage that by saying to people, if you want to do this as a walking meeting, that is acceptable, as long as you've got your mic on and you can talk to us, that type of thing. And actually, I think it's encouraged a bit, like Matt said. One of the things when you're kind of your brain is most creative is when you're doing something else, right? We all know that. Like, one of the times I find is if I'm out walking or I say running, but probably more jogging, or even doing something mundane at home, like brushing my teeth, then my kind of ideas come to life. So I do think actually maybe just trying to implement it in one meeting, whether that's one meeting a month, if that works in your workplace, or one meeting a week. I think just trying to encourage others to do it, and also doing it yourself. It's what Matt said earlier about the top down, right? So if we can get somebody in the senior team to encourage that, you'll find that others will also follow.
Okay. Matt, any suggestions from you?
I think, again, just don't underestimate the normal basic human beings. Like, human beings are designed to sit around a fire and talk about all the stuff. So go and make a cup of tea together before the meeting. Let's say it's a physical one. Let's go and make a cup of tea together. Like, even if then you need to sit down and go through some documents. Just like, again, those little things that can make a difference. This is a bizarre one that I do because I don't mind the cold. Sometimes I do like get a massive coat on and go and maybe do about 15 minutes of my emails outside or whatever, when I could have been inside, just to get a bit of that vitamin D through the sunlight and things like that. But I just always ask, does that meeting does it need to be in here, or does it need to be online? The other final one that I think is going out of fashion but shouldn't is just an old-fashioned phone call. I think we did that, didn't we? One of the times when Michelle and I met. I think, don't forget, you can actually pick up a phone like old school and have a chat. It doesn't have to be like this, because sometimes it's a busy week. You're not always ready to face someone. And I remember reading that, like, human beings, when they sit face to face, that's quite an aggressive thing, actually. Like, generally speaking, human beings don't sit face to face like that. So when you're making a cup of tea or you're having a phone call, sometimes that's actually quite nice. If you spend a whole day facing off with people, it's not always necessarily the best thing for your well-being.
That's excellent suggestions from you both. Sorry, Michelle, go on.
I was just going to say, and I think it's okay to say, if you're on a walking meeting, I might be a bit out of breath, because I'm outside and I'm walking. I think Matt and I were saying that, like, it's okay. I'm just taking a walk around the garden, so you might hear me a bit out of breath, but I'm still listening, that type of thing,
Yeah.
Fab, thank you. We've just got a couple of comments to share, and then we are going to wrap it up. Just that you both know, we've got a big thank you, brilliant session, and lots of inspiration to get moving to. And then I would like to thank you for this interesting conversation. I am taking some points for myself and for my team. Thanks very much. Brilliant session from both of you. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you will join us again for another conference sometime. And you're most welcome.